Good morning. We're going to get started this morning with the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Our invocation will be led by Pastor Kent Brown of Northwest Church of Christ, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Penelope Davis, representing Girl Scouts Troop 990. Please stand.
Invite you into this and every place. May all those here be aware of your presence. May you bring wisdom and compassion to this room and to those who occupy it. I thank you for each of our council persons, for our mayor, for our city manager who are here today to make decisions for our city. I ask that you would watch over them and bless them. I ask that you would bless the judges who are being appointed today with wisdom and discernment, the ability to know when to show mercy and when to give judgment. God, you know that in so many rooms like this one in our country, they are filled with people looking after their own interests, their own influence. I thank you for every occasion and moment when our council looks after the interest of others before the interest of their own. When so many in our world are most interested in the sound of their own voice, God, I ask that you would provide more occasions when this council listens to those voices that are the smallest and hardest to hear, listening for good ideas from unexpected places. Father, I thank you for this council's commitment to so many types of growth for this city and for our state, and I ask that you would continue to bless Oklahoma City. I thank you for the courage this group has demonstrated in recent years to make tough choices and to lead well. May you grow and increase that courage in each of those here. God, I pray for the prosperity of our city. May your blessings be on those who lead it, and may your blessings be on those that serve it. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Please stand with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Brown, and thank you, Penelope. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order, and we have one presentation under Office of the Mayor, and I'll meet our friends from Parks at the front of the room. All right, it is Parks, or it's about to be Parks and Recreation Month, and we would like to hear a little bit more about that, and so I would ask the clerk to read this proclamation.
Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of Oklahoma City and communities throughout this country. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Park and Recreation programming and education activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas help ensure the ecological beauty and environmental health of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Park and Recreation Month. And whereas MAPS 4 initiatives include nearly $300 million dedicated to projects that fall within the traditional jurisdiction of OKC Parks. And whereas the City of Oklahoma City recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore, I, David Holt, Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, do hereby proclaim July 2023 to be Park and Recreation Month in Oklahoma City.
Thank you very much. Well, Parks and Recreation, I don't know, that's going to stymie me all day. But Parks and Recreation is obviously a core service of our city, and we're so grateful to the taxpayers who have committed so much, especially through MAPS 4, and we're so grateful to the team at our Parks and Recreation Department who does so much to make all of this possible, and especially here in the summertime. It's kind of an especially fun time for our Parks and Recreation Department. So to hear a little bit more about that, I'd ask Melinda, the Parks and Recreation Director, to share a few thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we were wanting to bring up a whole cadre of our teammates up here, but everyone is busy doing summer camps and performing arts camps and the swimming lessons this morning that started right at 9 o'clock. And so everyone is super busy right now with their full-time summer activities. So we appreciate, of course, the residents who come out and enjoy our parks every single day and really, again, supporting us through the MAPS initiatives and bond initiatives. We couldn't do what we do without all of them. So we thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Let's hear it for our Parks and Recreation team. Happy Parks Month. All right, see you. Okay. Let's advance now to item 4, items from council. So item A, B, C, D, and D, and E are all related to our municipal courts and our judges, who they are and how they are compensated. And so I would turn it over to the chair of the Judiciary Committee, where these items are originating from, Councilman Stonecipher, to present.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to just take a brief moment. The Judiciary Committee, made up of Matt Hinkle, Jo Beth Hammond, Nikki Nice, and myself, met to consider these 5 items. Our decision was unanimous as to appointing Philippa James as a municipal judge, appointing Ed Hasbrook as municipal judge, as designating Philippa James as the presiding judge, and designating Donald O. Kiffin as vice presiding judge. The last item, the 5th item, is a compensation and benefits package that we worked really hard in coming up with something that we think's fair and represents what our judges should be paid. But the one thing I did want to point out very briefly is that we just recently got a judicial survey back, and the results are outstanding. If you look at displays knowledge of the law, outstanding results. If you look at maintains control over trial proceedings, outstanding results. If you look at maintains appropriate judicial temperament, outstanding results. And that's one of the things that the committee prides itself on, is we try to find judges that have great temperament. And what I mean by that is a lot of our citizens are, for the first time, experiencing Oklahoma City in the municipal court system. And so we want judges that have a good temperament and that will help people when they're involved in the legal process. So with that being said, at this time, I'd like to move for the approval of items 4A, B, C, D, and E. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so these are the items both making the appointments and setting compensation and benefits levels, and Councilman Stonecipher has made a motion for all 5, A through E. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, and we'll stay with you, Councilman Stonecipher. Item 4F, which is a resolution declaring an extension to December 31st, 2023 of the penalty reduction program that originally began in 2019.
Yeah, at this time I'd move for the approval of the resolution, please.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And item 4G is a resolution approving travel expenses for council members Jo Beth Hammond and Nikki Nice to attend the Local Progress National Convening 2023 in September in St. Louis.
Mayor,
There's a motion and a second. Yes, sir.
Could I ask a question on that one first?
Sure, of course.
Okay. I'd like to actually move for a deferral for 2 weeks on that. I've gotten 30-plus emails this morning.
Sorry, needed some parliamentary clarification. Your motion to defer does take precedence over the pending motion for approval, according to the municipal counselor. So we'll withdraw the motion to approve, and now there's a motion on the table to defer. Is that for 2 weeks,
Yes,
Councilor
please.
Carter? Okay. Any discussion on the motion to defer?
Not unless there's any questions.
Well, for my part, my understanding is some people are frustrated or upset, I don't know, but apparently don't want the city to pay for Councilman Nice and I to attend this conference, which we've done in the past, where I've learned about a lot of things like preemption and home rule and what other cities are doing to push back against preemptive laws from the state and federal government. Ideas like our community court and what we just voted on to extend the penalty reduction program are also types of programs that we learn about and hear about that other cities are doing. And just last year, I got to learn more about appropriate mental health crisis response when we attended the conference in Denver. Got to tour with their STAR program as part of the convening. Staff here have now had a chance to meet with Chief of Police there, other entities involved in that program. So if there are people out in the public that have issues with us attending this conference, I guess I would just say, I guess the ideas like that are not good, that you don't want to have in Oklahoma City. Seems odd to me. So that's all I have to say is I don't know why bother making such a deal about this, but that's all I got.
I would say I would actually welcome other council members to attend because, one, this is a nonpartisan group as far as local policy, and it's not just council members that attend. It's also school board members. It's also people who are out as far as communities are concerned, doing the work for those who may be underrepresented or need more help, depending on what that subject matter may be. And also when we look at our county, so it's all those local level folks that have a hand in how our local government and local city progresses. And I say for me, we've been going since 2019, and for this to now be questioned with the progress, I'm assuming too much progress has been made, so we need to halt that. But I will say for myself, one of the things that I was able to understand and learn more about was the fact of being able to implement a healthy neighborhood overlay ordinance for the 73111 zip code, for us to look at how we can better feed our communities with policy. And I think it's very important also for us to realize, because of that, this process of us working through that on our local level has also brought attention to our city for the rest of the country, of those local governments to understand how this policy can also be implemented in those local areas that are feeling the punch and the crunch of food insecurity and lack of food access within their respective neighborhoods. And when we look at the other places that we've been able to see things that have been served, I know one of the emails I received talked about the radical folks that serve on local government in cities. But I would also say and challenge that, because when we look at places where we go to the National League of Cities, we go to these other different conferences, the same local folks that serve on this committee that was mentioned on these local governments also serve on these platforms. So it's not as if when I go to Local Progress, I see people that I have been able to stay in contact with at NLC. So these are not a whole different group of people. These are the same local elected officials that we would see in these places. But again, I actually encourage more of our council members to go to get this information, because I know we're the two that are more interested in going, but I think all of us could truly benefit from the things that Local Progress has been able to bring throughout our communities, throughout our country, and throughout our cities. So I'm okay with us being able to defer that, because clearly if there are some questions that need to be answered, I think we're very transparent and open and happy to connect you with the folks from Local Progress that can be able to speak to what this program is and how they've been able to benefit with this nonpartisan focus of the things that they're doing. And I'm looking at right now, and I'm happy to share it, just Local Progress, their case studies from 2019, and that some of the subject matters: housing, good government in the public interest, robust local democracy and civic engagement. And we look at climate, transit, and infrastructure. And those are just a couple, education. So those are just a couple of things that we talk about: strengthening our public schools, talking about the school to prison pipeline, again, food procurement policies and programs. So these are not things that are out of the ordinary for us to do every day in order for us to serve the residents of our community. So again, happy to defer it. Not a problem for me, because we still have plenty of time for us to look at how many people and all the rest of us that can be a part of this process to attend.
Okay, we have a motion to defer this item 2 weeks. Do we have a second?
Wait, before we vote, I just want to make sure I'm hearing correctly from both Councilor Nice and Hammond. You're okay with us voting to defer this right now?
This is an open and transparent process of what this is and who Local Progress is, what they do, and how they impact our local communities and local policy. So very open to us, even if we have to get on a call with the executive director and those that help to manage the program. It's not a problem.
I mean, I haven't been, but I know you all have gone for years, and it seems like a no-brainer, but okay, we'll do this.
Do we have a second on this? Or are we waiting on the system? Is that the problem? Okay, here we go. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes on the deferral. Passes unanimously. Item is deferred to our meeting in 2 weeks, which I believe is actually, I'm saying 2 weeks, but I really mean July 5th, correct? Yeah, okay. All right, we have some critical budget and contract votes that are on this agenda today, and we have several members that are departing early. And so what we've discussed doing is pulling up, it's just about 4 or 5 votes, and handling those now just so we make sure everybody is here, because we've got several members going on a chamber trip a little later today, and they are going to leave mid-morning. So I would jump us, if you would, to page 19 of your printed agenda, and that is item 11V. This is related to the fire sales tax. So V1 is the second public hearing regarding the fire sales tax appropriations. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
They have not. And item V2 is the resolution regarding appropriations for the fire department for fiscal year 2023, 2024, et cetera. We already had presentations on these items at our previous meeting. So we could take a motion if there's no need for discussion or questions. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll continue along this vein onto page 20, 11W. This is the second public hearing regarding the sales tax, police sales tax appropriations. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak under this item?
No, they haven't.
They have not, and so we'll advance to the resolution at W2 regarding appropriations for the police department for fiscal year 2023, 2024, etc. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 6-2. We're going to skip the emergency operations plan and come back and hear that in the regular order. But we also want to handle these critical contract extensions with our employee groups. And so item Y1 is an extension of the collective bargaining agreement with the FOP until a successor contract is agreed upon, or August 29th. Executive session is not requested. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 8-1. And then we have an extension of the collective bargaining agreement with the IAFF at Z1 until such time a new agreement is signed, or June 30th of next year, okay? Whichever occurs first. Executive session is not requested. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And then finally, AA1, which is an extension of our collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME until for the next fiscal year, or August 29th, whichever occurs first. Executive session is not requested. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, thank you for your indulgence on that. I know it's a relief for staff to get those resolved while everyone was still here. And so we'll come back to our regular order. Item 5, City Manager reports. Mr. City Manager.
We have 2 reports that are on this morning. We don't have any presentations, but we have the Riversport quarterly report, and then we have our council priorities report on strong financial management. Glad to take questions on those, or if you look at them later and you have questions, staff can get back with you on that. But we don't have any other presentations.
Okay. Then we'll proceed to item 6, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have items A and B we can take with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 7, request for uncontested continuances. We have item 11F, which is already on the agenda for deferral. Mr. City Manager, what else might we have?
Starting on page 16, item 11L, this is PUD 1945. There's a request to extend this or defer this to the 18th of July.
Okay.
Then on page 18, item 11S1, dilapidated structures. All these items will be stricken from the agenda. Item G, 3005 Hickory Stick Road. The owner is secured. Item I, 5105 South Rhode Island Avenue. The owner is removed. Item P, 4704 Northwest 13th Street to re-notify for a new owner. Item R, 1225 Southeast 20th Street. The owner is secured. Item T, 3241 Northwest 31st Street, the owner is secured. Item U, 1606 Northwest 33rd Street, the owner is secured. Item X, 1137 Northwest 42nd Street, the owner is secured. Item Y, 1145 Northwest 42nd Street to re-notify. Item Z, 1204 Northwest 42nd Street, the owner has removed. And then item AB, 3336 Southwest 47th Street, the owner is secured. On page 19, abandoned buildings, 11T1. All of these items will be stricken from the agenda. Item E, 3005 Hickory Stick Road. The owner is secured. Item I, 4704 Northwest 13th Street to re-notify for a new owner. Item J, 1225 Southeast 20th Street. The owner is secured. Item L, 3241 Northwest 31st Street. The owner is secured. Item N, 1137 Northwest 42nd Street. The owner is secured. Item O, 1145 Northwest 42nd Street to re-notify. Item P, 1204 Northwest 42nd Street, the owner has removed. And then item Q, 3336 Southwest 47th Street, the owner has secured. That's all the items that I have.
All right. Number 8, revocable permits and events. We have item 8A, revocable permit with Mesta Park Neighborhood Association for Mesta Festa on September 23rd and 24th. No one has signed up to speak. Councilwoman Hammond.
Well, I know this is a really well-attended event every year and is a great thing to go to. So make sure you get out there in the fall, and I'll move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 8B is a revocable right-of-way use permit with Oklahoma City Pride Alliance, Inc. to hold the OKC Pride Alliance Pride Parade on Sunday, June 25th. And we do have a couple people who have signed up to speak. Forgive me, Kaylin Durant.
Hello, my name's Kylan Durant, he, him, and I'm the president of Oklahoma City Pride Alliance, which still feels wild to say. So we have a 3-day festival and a parade that takes place at Scissortail Park in downtown OKC. Before I get into what our festival and parade are, I want to talk a little bit about our theme and why we do this festival and parade. Our theme this year is Queer Joy, the Resistance, and I think after this year of unimaginable legislative attacks against our community, both in the state and around the country, we believe that queer joy is resistance. To have queer joy amidst all of those horrible attacks that have been happening this year and in recent years, it's incredibly difficult to keep that queer joy, especially for our queer youth and our trans youth. We know from the 2023 survey from the Trevor Project that surveyed about 25,000 queer youth that 2/3 of those queer youth report adverse effects to their mental health because of these legislative attacks. But we also know from their 2019 survey that having literally just one affirming adult in their life improves those mental health. It improves the risk that they face of suicide by 40%. And that's pretty major. We also know that having affirming spaces, which we are creating in downtown OKC, improves that mental health. So it's why we put on this 3-day festival and this parade. We have all sorts of wonderful things happening during the weekend. We've got incredible entertainment lined up. You may have seen that we've got Ali and AJ and Adore Delano coming to town. We also have a ton of local entertainment, along with our vendor marketplace, a youth zone for those queer youth to feel affirmed in. We've got a family zone. We have an expansion to the lower half, which includes sports this year, which is going to be incredible. We've teamed up with some incredible partners like Energy FC and the Thunder to create such great spaces for our queer community, and we're super excited about that. And then we've moved our parade this year to Sunday at 11 a.m. And we've shortened that parade route. We felt like, in the summer and in June, it's incredibly hot. So we want our people to still be able to come out and enjoy the festival after a long walk. So we shorten it just a little bit. It still goes pretty much along the same path, just shorter, and it ends at Scissortail Park into what we're going to be doing for the first time this year is a Sunday brunch, Sunday drag brunch on right after the parade. So we're super excited and can't wait to kick off the celebration.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Hammond? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We have one more person who signed up to speak. John Milner. I'm good. Okay. Councilwoman.
Yeah, well, I'll just say I really appreciate all the work y'all have put into this. I know it's a labor of love, it sounds like you all have been really intentional about that idea of creating spaces for all sorts of different people, different experiences, and just really looking forward to another celebration of allowing people to live out who they are. And I'm grateful that Ward 6 gets to host you all through at Scissortail for this event, and just really appreciate what you all bring to the city. I know, as like you mentioned, we've seen a lot of things coming from the state legislature, other places, and here that if we're ever going to live up to like our country's ideal of liberty and justice for all, that means not just saying, okay, like we tolerate you, but we celebrate and affirm and lift you up as people who are bringing something wonderful to the community. And for what you said, creating those spaces where people can see themselves, have the language for who they are, and have that hope that tomorrow, next year might be different, and that there are people in this city and in this state who are who want to see them here. So appreciate it, and I will move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll recess the council meeting now and convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. And we actually do have a presentation today on the MFA budget for the upcoming fiscal year. That's item C.
Yes, Lori Hurd with the Office of Management Budget is going to give us a brief presentation just as an overview of the MFA budget. Most of the other budgets that you see come through you just received, but on this one, because the council sits as the trust, that we wanted to make sure we had a presentation of what's included in this budget.
So good morning, Mayor, Council, City Manager, and City staff. I'm Lori Hurd. I'm a budget specialist in the Budget Office. So what I am bringing before you today is the FY24. We have the wrong presentation up. I am sorry. I apologize. So now we have the FY24 Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority budget. The OCMFA is a trust of the city that provides a mechanism that allows us to enter into multi-year contracts and then also allows us to maintain adequate reserves for things such as workers' compensation claims. At the last council, you all approved our city budget, and so with the MFA, the budget that is being presented today's primary source of revenue is from city funds for the specific purposes that we will review here shortly. So overall, the MFA budget is just under $140 million. You can see the various purposes by subfund, and health insurance is by far the biggest portion at $77 million. This comes from both the city and employees as they contribute to the premiums paid for health insurance. There are also several similar functions to health insurance in the MFA. Our property and liability insurance is about $14 million, and workers' compensation is projected to be about $12 million. We also pay for unemployment claims through the MFA, but those are relatively small at just $225,000. The second largest category is information technology. This is one of those areas that we can really utilize, being able to use multi-year contracts with vendors for computer systems, radio systems, E911, and other IT-related services. We also use the MFA for advanced capital funding for GEO bonds. We've established a revolving fund in the MFA that allows Public Works to begin the design work on GEO bond projects before the bonds are sold for the project. Once the bonds are sold, the bond funds purchase the plans from the MFA, and then we can work on these projects much more quickly. The repayment from those GEO bond replenishes the advanced capital funding account, and additional projects are then initiated within the MFA. The general purposes and other categories includes items such as annual financial audits, professional legal services, and then code enforcement related contracts. When we look at the revenue within the MFA, health insurance contributions from city and employees is the biggest source at 54%. Transfers from city funds such as IT Internal Service Fund is the second largest source at 27%. Fund balance is then the next largest at 14%, and then there are several miscellaneous revenue sources that account for just under 5% of the revenue. On the expense side, payments for services dominate at 93%, which makes sense considering things such as insurance premiums and IT contracts all fit in the other services and charges category. One thing to note is that there are no employees within the MFA, and that is why you don't see any personnel-related expenses. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. All right, that's the only presentation under OCMFA, so we could take all the items with one motion, as is our custom, and that's items A through O. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we'll adjourn OCMFA and convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, and similarly, we have a presentation for that budget at item D.
Steve Akins with the Office of Management Budget will give us an overview of this budget, similar to what we have with the MFA. Some of these funds have already, these approval of funds that are transferred from the city are already approved in the city budget, so this aligns with the city budget, and I'll let Steve give us the presentation.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Like the OCMFA, the OCPPA, the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority is a trust of the city. It also provides a mechanism that allows for multi-year contracts with vendors. And it's funding for items such as fairground improvements, golf course operations, MAPS facility-related activity, and sports facility improvements. And we'll start off with revenue. The largest revenue source is a transfer from the hotel tax of $19 million. The second largest is a short $19 million, $18.7 million from transfers from the general fund. Third largest is golf course revenue, which is green fees, cart and locker rentals, and concessions. Fund balance that's carried over from the prior year is $9.1 million. Other two categories are transfers from various funds at $1.9 million, and $2.6 million includes interest and miscellaneous revenue, ballpark ticket fees, etc. Moving on to expenses. The largest expense category is other services and charges at $27.3 million. And this includes the ASM management contract, the contracts for Oklahoma River projects, natural gas, operational expenses for the Paycom Center. Second largest expense is transfers, $12.1 million, which includes return of the tax to the hotel tax fund. Third largest is capital outlay at $7.4 million. And rounding out the expense categories, debt service at 6.4, personnel services at 5.5, and materials and supplies at 5.1. Then our last slide is our summary by function. The largest function MAPS is MAPS-related contracts and capital at $20.6 million. It includes contracts to the ASM for managing the Oklahoma City Convention Center, Paycom Center, and Prairie Surf Studios. The second largest category is fairgrounds at $20.3 million. Third largest category is golf courses at $13.6 million, and sports facilities at $4.6, and several other smaller categories round out the $63.7 million budget for the OCPPA for FY24. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, well, we have no other presentations under PPA, so we could take items A through E with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, we'll adjourn OCPPA and reconvene as the council, where we find ourselves on page 4 of your printed agenda. Item 9, the consent docket. And there is a scheduled presentation at CJ, and that's it.
That's it.
So is there anything else that a council member wishes to pull out for a separate discussion or a separate vote?
Yes, I'm looking for the item, so I apologize, but I know we have some folks that signed up to speak for the deferral item that happened a couple weeks ago.
Must be CS probably, based on the
That is what it
slips.
is, yes. I'd like to pull that out, please, thank you.
Yes, I would like to pull BR and CW for just more information, and then CV as a separate vote.
Okay, so my apologies. BR for discussion, right? Mm-hmm. And what was the second one?
CW for just discussion and information,
Okay.
and then CV for a separate vote.
C, what's that second letter?
V as in victory.
Oh, okay. Flock group, is that what you're talking about? Okay, got it. Okay, is there anything else?
Yes, I think. No. Okay.
Okay, well then, hearing none, we'll take them in order, which means we'll begin, I believe, with BR. Councilwoman Hammond?
Yes, I just wanted a little more information about this. And I see Eric just walked in, so putting him on the spot. But I just know that there's a lot going on Classen right now, a lot of work being done with the BRT, and just kind of wanted to get a little bit of an update and information out to the public on sort of this as a microcosm of the larger project, but just kind of speak to the resurfacing and some striping that's going to be coming up.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. So Eric Winger, Public Works Director. So on item BR, and as we continue to work on the bus rapid transit project, as we continue to do improvements along Classen Boulevard, staff during inspections noticed that several of the drainage inlets, especially those that are near some of the new bus stops, are actually very low. They're a little bit 2 to 3 inches below the surface of the pavement. With the BRT operating in that outside lane, we believe it's going to cause some bumpiness to the ride. It's going to be a place where the wheels of the bus may catch, since they're going to be operating in that outside lane. So this project specifically is going to be raising those inlets up to make them flush with the surface of the roadway. So it's not one of the original BRT projects, but it is one that we're finding that we want to complete before the BRT goes into service.
That sounds great. I appreciate the sort of reacting to those conditions, because yes, being on a bumpy bus is not fun, so thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up is item CJ, the presentation from the zoo.
Dwight Lawson, the director of our zoo, is here to give us a presentation on the zoo budget.
I'm happy to give you an overview of the zoo's 23-24 fiscal budget and a few of the activities we have going on. That this budget was approved by the trust at its May meeting. Let's see if I can work this. Maybe. There we go. As a little bit of background, coming out of COVID, we updated and redid our strategic plan last year. So we have an updated mission and vision statement, which focuses on a call to conservation action in addition to connecting kids and families with wildlife. Another major event kind of flowing out of that strategic plan process was that we restructured the agreement with the Zoo Society beginning last year. That moved the membership function of the zoo back over to the zoo and focused the society on fundraising and philanthropic support efforts. And I'm happy to say that, kind of less than a year into that, that's worked out really well. I think the relationship has been stronger than it's ever been, and they've been quite successful in their fundraising efforts. So we're very pleased with how that's going. In terms of the budget, we are ending the 22-23 year a little behind. We had some pretty bad weather during the course of the last 12 months. Last summer was brutally hot, and then spring break this year, which was a key period of time for us, was a complete rain out, cold, miserable week. So it was unfortunate timing, but we do have a number of opportunities coming up for next year. The biggest one of which is a full year with our new major exhibit expansion, Expedition Africa, which should be rolling out here over the next few weeks through the summer. So we'll have a full year of that. A few other minor pieces. The retirement contribution is down a little bit, and sales tax is up. So we are looking good in that regard. Other opportunities, we are expanding our preschool operation in the back half of the year, and then we are currently in the process of looking at a new food, beverage, and catering arrangement contract, which is, the RFP is out now, and we'll be making that selection here pretty soon. Challenges for the coming year, as always, weather plays a significant role in attendance, which drives a lot of our earned revenue. Again, the last 12 months were pretty off, but when we have had nice weather, we're seeing strong attendance, so I'm confident that with new attractions and a little bit of luck, we'll be in good shape for the coming year. As I think everybody is dealing with right now, compensation and staffing issues are another potential challenge. We do regular benchmarking on salaries and all, zoo-specific as well as general positions. So we are budgeting for that, but that has been an issue which I expect to continue, particularly on the front of house folks. Those have been tough to recruit, but we are managing with that. The other staffing issue that we will be dealing with, not necessarily a bad one, but our CFO announced recently that he is retiring, so we'll be recruiting a new CFO in the coming months. So we'll wish him well, but that is a big gap to fill. On the capital side, projects that we have ongoing, we have two major projects that we're wrapping up right now, basically. The first is a new administration building. After 40-plus years in the basement of the Science Museum, we're finally moving out and into new office space. We outgrew that space quite some time ago, so we're excited to be in some new digs. You can see some of the photos there, including a giant Indian rhinoceros doing a cannonball off the mezzanine into the lobby, which is a lot of fun. And in addition, the building, once it goes through its commissioning phase, will be LEED certified. The staff is getting used to practicing in a zero waste facility as well. So we've got compost bins under all the sinks. And once we get up and rolling and a little more moved in, it'll be pet friendly as well. So we're excited to be in there. The other big project is obviously Expedition Africa. This is the biggest capital construction project in the zoo's at least recent history. We've got 13 acres or so right in the heart of the zoo torn up for the last 2 years, so we're excited to have that almost complete. This includes, when it's open, it'll feature 77 species of animals with more than 200 individuals. About 37 of those species are new to the zoo, have never been in the Oklahoma City Zoo before, including our friend the honey badger there. It's 7 new buildings, as well as a reinvention and repurposing of the old pachyderm building. So we got that on the historic registry and worked through all the modifications in that building to keep it consistent with its historic nature. But now it will feature an event space where the elephants used to live, and the other space, the other 2/3 of the building, will feature smaller exhibits inside. And it's air-conditioned, climate-controlled, and I'm happy to report that the smell is gone as well. So you can have your event in there and not have to worry about the old rhino smell. And even with the construction that we've had going on, I'm pleased to report that our guest experience surveys continue to be strong. That wasn't necessarily the case last summer in the heat and all the construction, but now that we're coming out of it, we do this, we get a monthly report where we're benchmarked against about 14 other zoos that do the same guest experience survey coming out of it, and you can see that in the green there, at least for our May results, we were performing better than benchmark average for most of those categories. We do still see a lot of inconvenience. That's parking and believe it or not, people complain about the weather and things like that. Looking ahead to upcoming projects, we have 2. The preschool that I mentioned will be gutting the current our old office space in the bottom of the Science Museum and converting that to a dedicated preschool. We currently run a small preschool operation out of our education building. This will enable us to expand that quite a bit, serve more kids, but also go year-round and a full-day program rather than just the half-day that we currently offer right now. And then the other major project that we have coming, we've completed the design phase, and this should be hopefully going out once the trust approves it here in the next few months. But it's a new sea lion and penguin habitat that will replace the old aquatics building on the, what is that, the east side of the, northeast side of the zoo. So that'll be our next major capital project, and luckily that will not be right in the middle of the zoo. It'll be on the end, so it won't be as disruptive as what we've been through recently. Jumping into the budget on the operating side, you can see on earned revenue, we're budgeting a little bit down from our budget of last year. That's based on experience, so we're budgeting flat to where we were. We also had a separate paid Lego exhibit for part of last year, so that we're not repeating this year. So that is the reason for some of that earned revenue to be a little bit down. Other revenue, which is leases and interest payments, is up slightly thanks to the interest rates. And then sales tax revenue based on the city's projection will be up as well. And just as we were putting this presentation together, I wanted to point out that when we did this presentation, I think back in 2019, that sales tax funding comprised more than 60% of our overall revenue. And so thanks to some of the other revenue pieces that we've done, we've been able to augment and I think serve that sales tax better with some of our other revenue pieces. Looking at the earned revenue specifically, the bulk of that is made up through admissions and membership sales, and then a lot of the other pieces, rides, merchandise, food and beverage, et cetera, are all tied to that attendance volume as well. So we kind of live and die by the weather and attendance, as you can imagine. The other piece there in the red, the zoo lights, is now in its third year, and that's a pretty significant chunk of funding that comes in what was previously a pretty dead time of year. So adding zoo lights as a separate activity has really been beneficial. Looking at the expense side, again, relatively flat on the operating expense. Most of the increase is obviously due to compensation and positions. New positions for the Africa expansion were added this year. That project is running late. We'd hope to have it open by now, so we had to staff up with all the animals and all coming in. So we've started incurring some of those expenses, but we'll see a full year of that going forward. We've decreased our CIP line a little bit. That's just based on experience and what we're able to actually get done through the course of a year in those projects. And then obviously the master plan or the big capital expenses are decreasing as well with Africa wrapping up, and it'll be some time before Sea Lion gets underway. And then finally, looking in detail at the operating expense or expenditures, you can see that the personnel obviously makes up the vast majority of that at over 60%, followed by utility costs and some other services and activities as well. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm sure you said this, but when is Africa currently slated to open?
We're probably going to look at a rolling opening with all those different habitats and pieces, basically through probably from the July 4th weekend through July. We'll have little bits and pieces of that opening. And then once we get towards the end of summer and the weather breaks a little bit, we'll do a grand opening once everybody's in and kind of habituated to the new place.
I was there Sunday, by the way, at the zoo.
Sorry?
I was there Sunday at the zoo, and it's fabulous.
Great.
You and your team are doing a great
Thanks
job.
for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions, but I was honored to be able to get a tour just a few weeks back and take my family out there, and we haven't been out there in years. And just the things that you guys have developed and done, and the staff that you have, and the knowledge that they carry, and that it's probably the friendliest group I've ever been to next to Chick-fil-A. So
I'll take that as a compliment.
It was a great experience, and I'm very excited to see Africa open up, and I'm very grateful for your presentation and for the people that you've got working out there. So thank you.
Appreciate it. I'll pass that along. They do a great job.
Yeah, our family was out there this week as well, and to Councilmember Carter's comments. The improvements, if you haven't been to the zoo in a while, this is the year. Maybe wait till the fall, it's starting to get hot, I'm sorry. But, yeah. But we look forward to seeing that new exhibit opening as well. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
I'll say, before you leave, maybe the zoo can say our pleasure, since he was talking about that.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things I will ask for all of our council members, you have to see that rhino in person. This picture does not do it justice. You have to see that administration building, because that was definitely a labor of love and work, and to see it now, I tell you, it is really, truly an experience. One of the other things I will mention, if it's okay, is the sip and stroll. I know we have a lot of our activities that happen throughout the zoo, and I know one of the things that's very important is to have a very active board in your historical society, well, the zoological society, excuse me, are very adamant about supporting what happens in the programming. So sip and stroll this Thursday?
Yep, our last sip and stroll of the season is Thursday.
All right, and one of the other things that we've been working through too is our zoo amphitheater. And I know Dr. Lawson and I and some of the others that have been in the neighborhood and community have been working together to figure out some of the uses, and I want all of us, as well as far as our council, to look at and consider some of the things that this is going to need as far as improvements are concerned in the future and what that looks like. And I know right now, currently there is an RFP for an operator, correct? And if you may just expound on that a little bit, so therefore at least our public understands what this process looks like.
Right. So I think the Zoo AMP is probably a whole nother presentation on challenges and opportunities given its age. But yes, the current contract for the operator expires at the end of this summer. So we have an RFP out. And I don't recall the exact timing on the various pieces of that, but it's a pretty quick turnaround to generate discussions with a potential partner on, how we can improve that to basically make the experience inside the amphitheater better, make it more attractive as a venue for not just these concerts from out of town, but neighborhood events and other things like that. And then also basically buffer it from the neighborhood. It's in an awkward spot, and I know Councilwoman Nice bears the brunt of complaints that come in for noise, and so there's a lot of things that we could do, I think, to ameliorate some of those issues and make it a better, more accessible experience for everybody. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item CS. And we do have some residents who have signed up to speak, so maybe we'll start there. Xenophon Warrior.
And before Mr. Warrior speaks, I do want to make just a brief comment for our council. Last evening, the area of Forest Park hosted a community meeting for us to talk about what is happening as far as this potential development is concerned. And we did have the folks from the Medical Waste Services present, as well as a lot of neighbors and concerned residents to talk through what this could potentially look like. So I do want to preface all of our comments from that and go from there.
Okay, great. Xenophon Warrior, address is 5712 North Lottie Avenue. Looking at this particular use of this land use, it's kind of ironic. I feel like there's a piece of property that, for example, the city just annexed some property near 196 and May Avenue about a year ago that has quick and easy access to the Hefner Parkway Expressway that will lead into the location of the turnpikes and that type of thing. But I would really doubt that there were any type of use, this particular medical waste facility that's being proposed in this particular side of town, northeast side of town, I doubt that would even have a snowball chance in hell of being accepted at that particular location for that. Looking at the northeast quadrant, if we go back 70 years ago, there was a standard, there currently is a standard iron plant that was placed there that was approved by that particular planning commission back in the 50s that butted right up to the a neighborhood within a particular area. There has been some various waste products that have been brought over to Northeast 23rd and Martin Luther King that came from the urban renewal destruction that occurred downtown, and some of those type of materials were dumped over there in that particular section of 23rd and Martin Luther King for that. Looking at this particular location on Northeast on 23rd, it seems to be a lot of types of waste and dumps are being put on that side of town. Historically has been over the years past for that. At the Edwards Park, for example, we had at Northeast 16th and Bryant, that particular park did have a major makeover about 30 years ago, had a very nice pool, a very nice pond that was built there. I think it cost somewhere close to $1 million. However, there near 10th and Bryant, there still is a slush pool of various types of toxic waste at that particular location, in that particular area. And then we look at this location here on close to 36 and, or excuse me, Northeast 23rd and Coltrane. Now we're talking about a medical waste site being placed there. For that. As an executive board member of the Northeast Oklahoma City Neighborhood Alliance, which represents over 20 subdivision neighborhood associations within the Northeast area, we are definitely opposed to this type of land use at that particular site. I hope that would take that into consideration and not allow this type of use to be used with this medical waste at this particular location. Thank you.
Larry Epps. And probably it's worth noting, just to read while Mr. Epps is making his way to the podium, you know, the item is a resolution regarding the proposal's effect on Diggs Park. This is not a zoning case item. We'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a minute. I believe that may be coming, or would be necessary at least for this to proceed. But this is specifically related to how it affects Diggs Park, and I'm sure we'll hear from Melinda again probably in a few minutes. But Mr. Epps, please.
Good morning. My name is Larry Epps. I live at 3412 North Bryant Avenue in the town of Forest Park. I am the elected town treasurer, and we have, you know, the Northeast corridor has been showing some improvement over the last few years, and this facility would be right down the street from our neighborhood elementary school. And we also had a fire at one of these salvage yards that's on that same corridor not too long ago, where the residents had to be evacuated because of the toxicity of the, I guess, of the smoke and things of that nature. I was hoping that we would be more concerned with building up the Northeast corridor. We don't have really any markets. We don't really have any shopping areas. We don't have a lot of restaurants. Some things are coming back. That 23rd, between 23rd and Martin Luther King and 23rd and Lottie, we have had some improvement, and I've seen some improvement over the years, but we don't want our property values to go down because of things of this nature. Forest Park is an excellent little enclave in the middle of Oklahoma City. The neighborhood is turning over from an older population. The demographic is becoming younger and more families are moving in. It's a nice little hidden enclave in there, and we want to continue our community and our surrounding community to grow and be prosperous, to bring in jobs and things of that nature, and not things that are going to keep people from wanting to move closer to that community. So I implore you that I'm against it, and I know most of our residents are against it, and I hope you guys think about it and consider other areas. There's a lot of open land here in the city that is not close to housing, and no one really wants this kind of stuff next to their homes. So I just hope you consider it, what the townspeople are thinking on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hugh Smith?
Good morning, council members. My name is Hugh Smith. I live in the Forest Park District. I don't want to sound, the last time I was here, I didn't want to sound like we were beating a dead horse. But it seems like we have been in this situation several times, and the dead horse is still alive. So what I'd like to say is we've been through this down the road too many times, and it's time for a change in our district. And I believe this particular project will affect our homes in our area. Now, there are some things that keep affecting my memory, and the reason why is because I'm a little nervous. I'm concerned about the possibilities, basically. What will happen in this in this area if this project goes forward. So I would like to say that the traffic in the mornings, which these vehicles will be coming to this area, will create a hazardous problem on our streets. There's a up and down wind blowing toxic fumes, which these vehicles will be also polluting the air. Also, the monitoring of this project will be conducted with this company's, under this company's authority. I feel like we need some type of system where our community can come in if this happens to go forward. I believe that we should have some type of
30 seconds remaining.
inspection with our community to make sure this project is being ran in a proper stage. I'm only concerned about what could happen, what could possibly happen. And the bad just outweighs the good in this whole project. Thank you.
Deshaun Walton?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. As neighbors in Forest Park, Oklahoma, we are concerned that, number one, Ward 7 councilor had no advance notice of this medical waste disposal permit application being on the consent agenda. Number two, procedures that led to the item's placement on the consent agenda should be reviewed and revised to ensure that this never happens again. Number three, Northeast OKC is home of 5 Oklahoma's 6 Superfund sites, constituting an extreme instance of environmental injustice, technology that exists to measure the type and amount of environmental expectations in soil. The city of Oklahoma City should employ technology to measure the soil content in each quadrant in the city for use in the future similar considerations and decisions. Ward 7 leaders and citizens should pursue the process and designate areas of the Northeast 23rd Bryant to the Northeast 23rd and sooner as a brownfield site. As a resident of Oklahoma City, it is sad that all over Oklahoma City, there are different areas. And this particular waste is being considered right there in our back doors. I don't see it going to Nichols Hills, Edmond, Moore, or in any of you all's backyards. Just think if it was you, how would you feel? That's how I feel. I'm speaking for myself as a citizen of Oklahoma City. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie Johnson, Senator.
Good morning, Senator Mayor. Good morning, Council. It's a pleasure to be here. I am a resident of Oklahoma City since 1958, a resident of Forest Park since 1992. And I'm here today as one of the residents speaking to encourage you to reject this resolution, not adopt it. Not only is it not about an adverse impact on Diggs Park, it's an adverse impact on the future environmental viability of our area. As a former senator for the area and as a former coordinator for an environmental protection agency study, what we did, as Mr. Sean Walton mentioned, determined that out of the 6 Superfund sites in the state of Oklahoma, 5 of them are in Northeast Oklahoma City. That has shown up in the form of high cancer death rates in Forest Park, high rates of asthma among children, and he rightfully pointed out that, again, this quadrant of the city has been disproportionately assigned these types of projects. We met with the consultants, the team last night, and we thank them for coming and listening to us. We pleaded with them to withdraw this concern, to figure out somewhere else to put it. And so we're here today as neighbors, as residents of your neighboring town, to encourage you to vote down this resolution, vote down any consideration of this kind of a proposal going forward without first considering doing some assessments of what's already in each of these quadrants, and then starting to make decisions on not only how to move it around, but how to perhaps clean up some of what's going on for future reference. The Garber-Wellington Aquifer is perhaps the biggest concern of our area. We were assured that the containers that will be transporting these materials are safe. It's just a drop-off point. However, in today's times, there's no way to know
30
what could
seconds
happen
remaining.
that will potentially have an impact on the people who live around that area. Again, we're asking today that you vote down this resolution and consider some alternatives in terms of how to clean up and further promote viable economic development in this area. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Michael Washington.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. Well. Y'all know Michael was gonna be nice when he stepped up in it, don't you? Well, who wrote this mess up here? How it affects Diggs Park. What a flagrant disrespect to my African-American community. Are you kidding me? How it's gonna affect our park? Are you serious? Not how it's gonna affect the residents, not how it's gonna affect the children, but the park. How much money you got in the park, sir and madams? Really? How the hell you think we supposed to expect this flagrant disregard of African-Americans' culture? It is a flagrant disregard for our humanity, and guess what? I'm ready to help these people out who has to file a civil rights lawsuit to stop this madness because it's all about a racist agenda. Now, don't we know that? And it seems to be hidden measures as well that's designed to move these people out because somebody wants the housing area that they live in today. You've been too comfortable for us, and we need y'all's positions now. That's why I get my idea from. Now, then, I'm not going to be nice for what? How it affects Diggs Park? To hell with you black folks over there. Is that what you saying? Shouldn't it have been how it affects black people or anybody else who live in that area? Not just a park. What the hell's a park got to do with anything? When you can make a housing project or what you have with it. Come on, man, really? Come on, y'all know I wasn't finna be nice about this here. I take that mess over to Nichols Hills or somewhere. Why? Because, oh, we better not do that. They won't support us if we do that. They're taking money from, they run all the opulent downtown area, and we need those people's money. We ain't gonna talk crazy to them, huh? Because they got too many friends on various boards? Come on, man. These people have lived in this area for many years. Families have died off and inherited these homes and things. Why? Because they chose this part of the area to live in, because that's where they want to live. Don't every citizen have a right to be where they live, where they're allowed to live? Oh, but no, I'm going to bring a waste medical plant here. Let's dump these fetuses and things of that nature that we deliberately kill. That's right, you heard what I said. I'm not going to bite my tongue. That's right, you heard me say, and I mean business today. Let's bring it over there.
30 seconds remaining.
The rationale, the breathing treatment of people living, the kids in the parks. Playing with little dolls and things. Come on, man, nobody's foolish, nobody's stupid. Y'all just can't pass this resolution. Y'all got to think of the human nature. The human people is going to be deprived if such a ruling is like, man, can't y'all take it somewhere out and all that land area that's built out there on them highways and things? How come y'all can't go get all that? Y'all that land, we got various lands. Ain't nothing on them. Thank y'all very much, because Michael's going to be back and I'll start a piece of B. Thank you.
Jason McAulty.
Good morning. As a representative of Medical Waste Services, I'm just here to answer any questions that you all may have.
We got questions probably, yeah. Well, maybe stay there, but Jeff, could you come forward? I'd like to kind of define how we got here. So is this property currently zoned for this use?
It is not. In order to allow for this use, it would need to be rezoned. It's an I-2 use, so they need I-2 zoning or a PUD.
So, I'm sorry, is it
McAnulty.
Say it again.
McAnulty.
McAnulty.
Yes.
Mr. McAnulty, how did you come to, how did the process work that you would come to us first for this approval regarding the impact on the park before we would go through the zoning process?
Well, that would have to defer to the Terracon group that is handling our permitting process.
Okay. Jeff, do you know why that might have come in this order? Because it seems unusual.
Sure. They're two separate processes, so they need to go to the state to, well, the state needs our, I guess, approval or indication that this will not be an impact on the park, which is half a mile away roughly, and that's all this process is. A lot of what we're hearing, have been hearing, is something that would be appropriate for a rezoning. So when and if this comes through for a rezoning process, that would be the time to air any manner of concerns related to land use, both right next to the property, in the immediate vicinity, the entire neighborhood. So they are, again, two separate processes. They could have chosen to submit it for a rezone application already had they wished to do so. It's just a matter of preference on their part, I would imagine.
Does your zoning usually need to have do you require the DEQ approval as part of that?
No, that's purely the state.
So that was
just
their
wanting,
choice to pursue DEQ first before rezoning?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for either of these people?
I do. I have quite a few comments first. One thing that I will say, dealing with the zoning processes that I've already been through pertaining to our issues or permitting with DEQ, is that these processes have happened synonymously. So they have not happened one before the other, they've happened together. So we just approved last month or the month before for a special permit as far as a mining on Northeast 23rd Street, and it's right next to closer to Sooner. And one of the things that happened in that particular case, zoning request, was they were pursuing that particular DEQ process. At the same time, they were going through the permitting process with the city as far as our zoning process is concerned. So therefore, those two things were working together, if that makes sense to us. There was another case that I can't fully recall that was more recent with a special permit for our area that also was going synonymously together as far as the process. And I will say with our, I know what it is now, this one was a PUD that happened on Britton and Kelly. And they needed, this particular property owner needed to go to DEQ for approval for their composting of what they wanted to do and go through that process. So they actually zoned it. This one zoned it before they went through the process and the same. So here we are with this particular situation in this property. One of the things that we know, this is an actual residence. There's a residence and there's a business in front of this residence on this property. And then the warehouse sits quite far in the back of this property. This medical waste, I'm sorry, the name of Medical Waste Services, they currently operate their transfer station at 1609 Southeast 39th Street. So they do currently have an operation that they use and use this in transfer right now. I understand they have operations, and you may help me with this, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee.
And parts of Mississippi and Kansas.
Parts of Mississippi and Kansas. So one of the things that we do know is with this facility, there will be regulated and non-regulated, is that correct?
It's all regulated.
All regulated, thank you for that correction. We also understand that the things that will be used as far as the things they pick up come from on their website, dentist offices, nursing homes, tattoo shops, doctor's offices, hospital, funeral homes, laboratories, other industries. So there's a list of industries that they serve as far as this area is concerned as well. So here's what my issue is. In the processes that I talked about earlier, I talked about how those processes of people rezoning or developers or property owners rezoning have been synonymous. Unfortunately, this did not happen in the same way. So therefore, I will ask because, well, I want us to look at that. But I am going to ask, as far as the park response is concerned, was that a conversation with our planning department, or was that just strictly looking at the overlay of the park and understanding that it has no impact on the park, but not the future planning of what is going to happen, even the boundaries of the park are concerned, as far as some development we're looking at for Northeast 23rd Street going east?
Right, so Melinda McMillan Miller, Director of Oklahoma City Parks Department. So when we had the conversations with Tara Khan about the impact of Diggs Park, it was truly looking at the boundaries of Diggs Park only, as the DEQ request is for. And from understanding with them what the transfer is, and that it's not like a composting site or a trash site where you have odors or blowing debris or anything like that. None of those would occur within that half-mile radius to the park. There would then no adverse impact to the park property itself.
Okay. That still concerns me of the boundaries of where the park is, because we still have development that we have planned to occur in the areas that even surround where the park is located. So those are also things that that it's unfortunate that we don't get to take into account as far as this response is concerned. So I appreciate that. As we look at healthcare waste and some of the things that I was able to look up and find, some of the things that we know for sure, while we understand and have heard that these are going to be sealed and whatever the case may be, there are still quite a few healthcare risks. There are risks to our environment as far as the impact of that, the disposal of untreated healthcare in landfills. That's other things that could happen. And we could talk about the release of those pathogens and toxic pollutants in the environment. So there are always going to be concerns, whether we think there will be or not. There's always going to be concerns. And one of the things that I think is very important for us to consider here today as this council is, one, this is not zoned for this purpose now. So they can't do it. And it's, again, us putting the cart before the horse of being able to say it's not going to impact our park, but we haven't even said that this can be rezoned for them to even use. So it's almost as if we're skipping the step that is most important, which is right now being able to speak to the community and being able to go through that zoning process to see how that would work, if that would be compatible use through our zoning process of having this use unit added to what you are wanting to do. So that's what I'm looking at as far as this is concerned. So I am going to ask, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to make that decision. How do we get you to go through that process of zoning first before we have to come back as a city and say, this is okay, this is not going to impact our park? Because I feel our city is not doing a due diligence, in my opinion, for us to respond right now without you all going through that process of asking for a proper zoning request for this particular piece of property. So I'm curious to know what are your thoughts and how you feel about that, because that is where my concern lies.
Sure. As far as the permitting process goes, I can't really speak to that because it's outside of my scope of work.
Understood.
So what I can speak to of is we are heavily regulated by ODEC. And we do have a great track record with them at our current facility right now. And we do everything they ask of us, and we provide them with every bit of information that they need from us to ensure that we're doing it correctly. We have a physical on-site inspection once a year. I'm in constant contact with Lindsay in that department. And we try to run our business correctly. We do run our business correctly.
Okay. And I don't have any
safely.
doubt. I don't have any doubt that you have a viable business, or else you wouldn't be in all of these places. No doubt about that. Again, my concern is, one, where you are wanting to be does not allow you to do it. And we haven't gone through that process to say you can. So that's why I would like for us to look at going through our process first, or synonymously going through both, if that is what you're wanting to do. It still has to go through those other layers, as we talked about last evening, with our our staff report, our planning department, and then back to our council for final consideration. But I would want to do a due diligence to you, but I definitely want to make sure we do due diligence to the community that you will be a part of if this were to be approved.
Sure, and that's what we're looking to do is be a part of the community and grow with the community.
Okay.
You know,
Then-
and be neighbors.
I have a thought. What about a long-term deferral? And
That is what get out of my brain, please, Mayor.
so that we
What
can,
I
we can force
definitely-
them to do the zoning process first.
That's what I'm going to ask for us to do. I would like for us to go ahead and defer this. Can we do I don't want to say, I'm not sure.
We could strike the item.
That's what I was
And then we
thinking.
can just bring it back as staff.
Okay.
And that way you don't have to have a date on it.
Okay,
That seems fair.
that is fair.
With an understanding that we would prefer it not come back until this is properly zoned for
And
this.
we'll work with them on that and let them know.
Okay.
Now, may I ask, is there, or do you or the folks from Terracon know of any reason, some hardship that would create that we're unaware of? I mean, doesn't mean we wouldn't do it, but at least we'd like to know, I'm sure.
Good morning. My name's Toby Heater with Terracon Consultants. I don't know about a hardship necessarily, but there's kind of a chicken or egg type of situation here. You have to, you can't rezone something, well, I guess you could, without having it permitted first. And so there's a kind of a first step that we have to do to be able to get approval from the DEQ that's okay to put the facility there. They don't have to be in tandem. We do a lot of projects where we work on the permitting side, because if we get a zone to allow this, but the DEQ does not allow it to be permitted, then it's kind of a wasted effort on one side or the other. So
I get that.
The initial step is to
Now,
get
I want to
permit.
clarify the statement you just made, because it's in some conflict with something Jeff said a few minutes ago. So he's saying he can't get rezoning until he has his DEQ permit. Do you agree with that?
And Sarah and I were just discussing this. I don't think we would require the DEQ permit to give, well, we certainly would not to give them the zoning they need if they were to come in and get I-2. Now, it may come up in discussion, of course, but getting an I-2 zone or a PUD that would allow this use and any number of other uses doesn't require a specific permit. So it's not like
Any response to that, our friend from Terracon?
Well, and so I maybe misspoke about it's kind of one or the other, and it's kind of a step process. So it's either we can try to do them at the same time and spend the energy doing that, or get approval from DEQ first, so we know that the facility can be permitted and can be landed there, and then work on it from a zoning issue after that.
Well, I think from our perspective, we're being asked a very, very narrow question. I think makes us all uncomfortable, because it appears that if we were to say that this doesn't have an effect on the park, that we also endorse the land use. I think that we're not comfortable with the net effect of that. And so I think our desire is that you, which one's the chicken or which one's the egg, but I think that we pursue the land use first. Councilwoman?
Totally agree. And again, as I explained previously, the permitting process that I've dealt with DEQ, those developers or property owners, or those who have been able to consult with those property owners, have been willing to do that synonymously instead of doing one before the other. And I think that's what the disservice right now is to our neighbors, because we're getting notice about something before it has even gone through our process, our city process. So I am going to ask, as our city process, that we're able to work through both, but I would like for our city process to say that this is okay before our permit for DEQ approves that use for you all to be able to do the same.
Since you two are here right now, because at some point, the inevitable is coming, it's going to go through the process and it's going to come back to us, I would imagine. So I just want to ask you this question ahead of time. I looked up the address for the 39th Street, Southeast 39th Street, and just to see its proximity to housing and really just the urban core. What response do you have at this moment? I mean, as you're already kind of hearing, I don't think anyone is, saying that your work is, questionable. I do think, just from what I'm hearing from the residents, is they're describing to this council and us a history, right, which precedes your company. It precedes you. I'm sorry, it just does. That's no shade, it's just the truth. Did you all know this history? What response do you have to just this history of a Northeast side that's pretty, there's a national history there too of Black communities finding themselves on the wrong side of disastrous environmental decisions by local government, state government, and federal government. So I'm looking at the proximity of the 39th Street one to housing and commercial versus what you all are doing on 23rd Street? What response?
So our 39th Street property, on the border on the left-hand side of the piece of property there, actually is a house right next to it. There are people living in that house, and my guys we're in and out of there every day of the week, and we're great neighbors. We take care of our property. It's secure. You know, DEQ requires us to have a perimeter, be fenced off, chained and locked. When my guys are there, it can be unlocked. When they're gone, it has to be locked. Everything's closed up, sealed up. As far as the history over here in the northeast quadrant, no, we don't know that history. The reason we chose this piece of property, there are several factors including. So, one, the size of the piece of property allows us to have some room to breathe. Excuse me. Two, the way that we can come off of the interstate and get into that piece of property is logistically great for our truck drivers. Three, you know, we are working under the rules of DOT and drive time hours and stuff like that. So if we were to go further west into the city to buy a piece of property, we are now asking my truck driver to drive from Arkansas over 5.5 hours to pick up a trailer where he's not going to be able to turn around and make it back home before he's got to shut down and have a break. So that really is why we chose this piece of property. It makes sense logistically for how our operation works.
So this is just my final thing on that. I actually really appreciate that response, because what I would now encourage you and just the two entities to do is, now you know the history, you know it, and there's just a saying of when you know better, you do better. I also understand logistically why you just described it to me, why you do what you would do, but now I think it's really worth you all's time to think about this history and the historic distrust that's going to exist with the neighbors over there. It's not your fault, but it is what it is. And I just really think it's time to not just work with the neighbors in that area, but it really might be worth thinking about the where going forward, and thinking about the needs of your drivers and that connection. But there's just that history that precedes you all that you didn't know, largely because we don't teach it. And you heard the senator have to do research in their capacity, serving in the legislature, to even bring to light some of that backstory. So that's just all I would kind of encourage you all to think about. Thank you.
Okay, do we want to, so the potential motion, it sounds like, is motion to strike, understanding that this could return, but we would prefer not to see it until after a zoning process has been completed, which usually takes a few months.
That's correct.
All right, you want to bring that up for a motion? This is a motion to strike item 9CS. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. So I do want to reiterate, and I think this is reflective of everybody's views up here. Not that we don't think this is a necessary business, not that we don't think you do a great job at it, but I think we really want to see a different process followed in a different order, especially where there seems to be pushback. So this item has been struck, and I think it's our intent behind that to see this now go through a zoning process. Thank you, and thank you to all the residents who came.
Yes, I want to also say thank you again to all the residents and to Medical Waste Services for taking the time to come and visit with us and travel to our community to speak. So you all, again, this is another layer, as we talked about last evening. So we look forward to continuing the process and conversations, with each other as we go through this as well.
Okay, that brings us to item CV. Councilwoman Hammond, you wanted to vote on this separately, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I just, as I've stated before, have real concerns with the planning and implementation of the Real-Time Crime Center, and this is approving a change to a services agreement with an entity that would be looping into that. crime center, and I've still not really received any documentation about policies, how any of this technology is going to be used. So I would just like to vote separately so I can vote no. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just curious, can we, if there is information, can we have it today? If there is further information about,
Do you know if we have any information
to
on-
answer her
on the
questions?
policies?
There's Chief.
Wade Gorley, Chief of Police. We do have policies in place. We're currently using Flock. This is just a extension of the current contract that we're using already. Flock has helped us solve more than one homicide, several serious shooting events where people were seriously injured, and multiple serious crimes throughout the city, and we're currently already using the Flock cameras.
So we have that in policies? We have policies or procedures that are written that are followed?
Yes, before we implemented, we had those in place.
Okay, and that's something that we could provide to council, that we could provide the policies of how we follow that and when we use those?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I guess my question is, for Councilwoman Hammond to have asked for them, how come we haven't been able to receive that information yet? If this has already been put in place and we've been able to do the things that have been asked?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one.
I know when we did the original purchase and the things leading up to this, that did come before council because of the cost.
So we could definitely get copies of those policies.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Is this going to be a one-time vote, or will this be something that we'll be able to review annually as far as this contract is concerned?
This is
Or
something I think that
agreement?
we'll have to approve annually, isn't it?
Yes,
It's an annual
it's a one-year contract.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chief. I guess we want to see about a motion to vote on this item separately. That would be item 9CV. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 5-2. Okay, and Councilwoman Hammond, you wanted to maybe discuss item CW?
Yes, I just wanted to hear, because I know we had received some information from city manager a few months back, but recognizing that this is actually a retroactive contract, wanted to make sure the public understood our relationship with what cost the city is paying to when we put people in jail on specifically city charges, and better understand why it kind of took a while to get us this contract.
Jason Fairbrush, Assistant City Manager, is here. He's been working with me on this, and we have had some changes, both in staffing as well as some board member changes that had some effect on this as negotiations were going on, but I'll let Jason address that.
Yeah, hey, good morning, Mayor and Council. Again, Jason Fairbrush, Assistant City Manager, also Director of the Public Transportation and Parking Department. And yeah, absolutely, this is an annual services agreement. We refer to it as our jail services agreement with Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Authority. Typically, we do bring this a lot earlier to council. It's not our preference to do this retroactive. However, there's some extenuating factors this year that we had to recognize as we were in the middle of negotiations. So I think one of the things that certainly is worth calling out is the fact that the amount of municipal prisoners, or I should say municipal detainees, is significantly down. At one point, it was in the neighborhood of maybe 8 to 9 a day. So that's a significant decrease in the amount of detainees going to the Oklahoma County Jail on municipal charges. The other side to that is that if we look, several years back when those numbers were higher, because the contract is constructed in a way to basically, or I should say previously was constructed in a way to basically bill the city for a cost per detainee, the fact is when the amount of detainees goes down significantly, then the city's costs potentially go down significantly, right? Well, in negotiations, that's obviously an item that both parties had to work through because, as we know, the Oklahoma County Jail, part of their budget, if you will, or the resources they use to administer, or count on that city contribution, if you will. And so we kind of ran into a situation where there were less detainees being held overnight that would incur charges, but there were still a certain number of detainees, right, that were being processed and then released. They weren't staying a jail night, if you were. And so through that negotiation, discussion, both parties agreed to, for this fiscal year, to basically set an amount of $500,000, which is very comparable to what the agreement was for last year, and then go into negotiations for the FY24 fiscal year, really with the idea of being able to open up the agreement, understand the fact that, if the trend of detainees continues to be down or low, where does that put us? Where does that put the city and the county in terms of reaching some type of agreement? And so we've already been in communication with the jail trust, if you will, to set up those negotiations for FY24. It looks like we may be meeting as early as tomorrow. So that's really kind of an explanation of how we got to the number we're at now and why it took longer than normal to get to an agreement.
Okay. Any other questions on this? All right, we have a resident who signed up to speak. Michael Washington.
Yes, thank you. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, sir. We are very, very familiar with the status of the city of Oklahoma City and the county of Oklahoma. Sir, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that here, maybe a year or two ago, where the city just approved of giving money to fix up the Oklahoma County Jail building, district court building. So isn't it possibly, too, that you're giving this money, again, not questioning you, I'm just, this is my opinion, possibly. Isn't it quite possible that just like the money that they approved here of giving to fix up the county buildings, that this may be another measure that's geared toward helping to renovate the Oklahoma County Detention Center, as a place I call House of Horror, by the way. $500,000 annually to house the residents of a municipality who we know on average maybe staying there 3 or 4 days. Really not. You just said it has dipped dramatically. Your own words. Yet you want $500,000 to do what? Ensure the continual deaths? Make sure they're not giving outside recreation, adequate medical facilities, psychological services? Must I continue? I don't believe this measure should be passed, because in so passing, you would disregard the lives that are negatively affected on a daily basis. These people don't need any money. They need to quit spending that money plushing their office buildings and things. That's what they need to stop doing. I'm told that the sheriff's getting ready to have him an opulent place there in the jail. Oh, my God, worth that fits a king. I'm told this now. Now, y'all have enough money. Matter of fact, I don't suggest this being approved if I were to oversee the process of how that money is spent. At least we'll know, ladies and gentlemen of this jury, that the money is going to be spent appropriately.
30 seconds
And
remaining.
recognized of the inmates who go in and out of the facility. I say, no! We can't allow jail service agreement with Oklahoma County Criminals Justice Authority. That's what I call it. They know I talk in front of the back and behind. So Michael, don't just do that. Again, in 9 seconds left, let's vote it down. It's been a wonderful day, y'all, but I have to leave now. I'm a little bit exhausted. Thank you.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, we can take the remainder of the consent docket, absent the one item already approved and the one item struck. We bring up a motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes to approve the consent docket. Passes unanimously. All right, concurrence. Item 10, items A through I, we can take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11, items requiring separate votes. Item A is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval rezoning 3645 Northwest 15th from R1 to C1. Councilwoman Hammond, no one is signed up to speak.
Yes, I have no questions. I will move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11B is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval rezoning 212 Northwest 95th from R1 to I1. Councilwoman Nice, no one is signed up to speak.
Thank you. This is to allow light industrial use and development, and this is actually compatible, with the surrounding areas as far as I-1 is concerned. So I will move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 11C is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 10801 South Anderson from AA and AE2 to RA2 and AE2. Councilman Stone, no one is signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a simple lot split, creating one additional lot. No protests. Certainly recommended for approval, so with that, I'll make the motion for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11D is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 3745 Northwest 37th Place from PUD 417 to I2. Councilman Cooper, no one is signed up to speak.
Yeah, but is anyone here representing? Come on up, please.
Good morning, Purvi Patel with Wallace Design Collective, representing the applicant. The address is 410 North Walnut. We are requesting a rezoning from the PUD to I-2 just in order to pull this 6,000 square foot parcel out of the PUD. The current PUD has a restriction of only one building allowed. It was approved in 1992. Our client owns a property to the west and to the north, so the larger part of this is to rezone to I-2 to do a lot merge the parcel to the north and for them to expand their existing commercial restaurant supply business.
Thank you, and just wanted to say thank you to you for taking time to talk with me virtually about your work here, and I would move for approval.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 11E is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 1304 Northeast 14th from R1 to R4. Councilwoman Nice, the applicant, Robert Haggard, is available for questions.
Yes, please come through, yes.
Mayor and Council, Robert Haggard, if you need any questions answered.
Yes, I know this is next to a convenience store. And people were asking, did have some questions asked if you, I had some questions asked if you were a part of that, the corner store. Is that also your property? The convenience store is your property? Oh, okay. Well, what I'm going to do, I would like to personally visit with you because of the things that are taking place there in comparison to what you're wanting to do with this property. So I am going to ask that we defer this for a couple weeks so you and I can have a personal visit about both properties in relation to us being able to rezone this property that you're requesting, okay? So I look forward to us being able to have that conversation. So I will ask that we defer this for 2 weeks. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion for deferral and a second. Cast your votes. This will be to July 5th, technically speaking. Passes unanimously. So the item will be back on July 5th. Yes.
Well, we'll need to visit before then. I want to visit with you before then, before July the 5th. Yes, if you'll leave your information, to Miss, do we have it? Okay, I have it. I'll reach out to you. Yes.
We do. You put it on the yellow sheet. We got it. She'll call you. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, item F was previously deferred. Item G is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 9900 Piedmont Road from R1 to PUD 1943.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for deferral on that.
Oh, okay. We do have someone who came here to speak against it. And is Betty Sackett still here? Maybe we'll go here. Since you made the trip, there's going to be a motion to defer this item till the next meeting. But do you want to speak today?
May I?
Yes. If there were 20 of you, I might have said no, but.
I understand that it's been deferred?
It's about to be, I think. So.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. My name is Betty Sackett. I own the 75 acres directly north of the proposed zoning change. My grandfather purchased this property in 1914. I have watched the development of this 320 acres since 2006 by Arkansas developers. The ownership of this property has changed across these years from Trinity Estates to now OKCL Development LLC. To bring us up to date on this subdivision, a bit of history is as follows. The notice of hearing to approve the preliminary plat dated October 2006 stated the proposed use was 1,017 single-family residential lots on 323.47 acres. 10 years later, the staff report of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission, dated October 25, 2016, stated in part, the developer is proposing 1,217 single-family lots and several common areas in 323.47 acres, yielding a gross residential density of 3.76 dwelling acres per unit. The lots in this development range in size between 6,500 and 12,500 square feet. A front building setback line of 20 feet is proposed on all lots. 200 more houses. This spring, the notice of hearing to approve the preliminary plat of Redstone Ranch North dated April 2023 proposed 400 lots on 60 acres. However, the staff report of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission dated April 27, 2023 states, the developer is proposing 400 single-family residential lots and 2 common areas on 85.44 acres, yielding a gross residential density of 4.68 dwelling units per acre, which magically puts it within the necessary density of the UL density proposed by the Oklahoma City Comprehensive Plan. My question to the council is whether common area acreage is to be considered in computing the density of housing. I haven't gotten an answer from anybody about that. The staff report goes on to state PUD 1943 is split into 2 tracks. Track 1 allows 4,800 square feet minimum lots and 40-foot minimum lot widths.
30
This
seconds
tract
remaining.
represents the eastern two-thirds of the site. Tract 2 allows 3,600 square foot lots with 30-foot minimum width, and Tract 2 is in the interior portion of the tract. Upon closer examination of the preliminary plat, it appears that 134 lots will be of the 3,600 square foot size. I'm not opposed to affordable housing or senior housing, but I humbly request that the zoning remain R1. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Stone, back to you.
I'll make a motion to defer.
Okay. This is till July 5th?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes on a deferral. Passes unanimously. Item is deferred to July 5th. Ms. Sackett, you may want to come back. Okay, item 11H is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 1201 Northwest 178th Street from PUD 1319 to PUD 1944. Did anybody communicate with Councilman Stone?
Yeah, Mayor,
Okay.
there were no protests. It was recommended for approval, so I'll make a motion for the approval.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item I is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 3622 Northwest 192nd Street from PUD 1111 to, I'm sorry? Oh, I didn't catch that. This is defer? L, I thought was the, what was your,
I's deferred.
I's deferred? Okay. It wasn't L?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know what?
It was a typo,
I think I said L.
but it's I.
I usually follow what you said.
Yes, I think I said L.
But you meant
It was
I.
supposed to be I, yes.
Okay.
Because it was PUD 1945. That's my mistake.
Okay. Well, we're in a little bit of a pickle. So you actually said out loud L.
I did.
And that is really what's in the record. That has,
Yes.
that item has now been technically deferred because
Yes.
of that. I really wish Kenny were in here right now. 'Cause
Yeah.
we need to undefer L.
See what we can do here.
Okay. But let's take a vote because we didn't handle it earlier to defer I. And was that to July 5th? Was that the 18th? Okay. All right, so item I needs to be deferred to July 18th. So let's take a motion on that. All right, we have a motion and a second to defer this item. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item J is an ordinance on final, we'll deal with the L issue in a minute. Item J is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 1044 Southwest 44th from R1, R40 to SPUD 45, SPUD 556 to SPUD 1514. Councilwoman Hammond, known as Senator to speak.
Yes, it does look like the applicant is here. Who could speak to the project, just so everyone knows what's going on.
Sure. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. So this is an area that's right across the street from the large Southwest Integris Medical. So what we propose to do is to allow uses that would be compatible with additional medical facilities right across the street. No protest, work with staff on the SPUD as we were going through Planning Commission. It did receive a recommendation for approval by Planning staff as well as Planning Commission. Yes, I'm glad to see some things going up on an empty lot, so I am happy to move for approval.
Sorry, what's going on here? You guys okay? All right. We have a motion and a second for approval, I presume. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item K is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 2105 Northwest 122nd from PUD 62A to SPUD 1520. Councilwoman Nice, known to sign up to speak.
Thank you. I think I was more caught up in us undeferring something. That's fun. Okay, this, we want to come and talk about this, please?
Yes, I'm also very curious about the undeferring
Yeah.
because I have that item too. So, but yes, on this item, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, application behind some existing uses. My client attempted to design the site in a manner that would be protective of the folks to the west. So we've kind of turned in all of that parking. Received no protest at Planning Commission. No protest here today. Recommendation for approval by staff and Planning Commission. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm just curious, as far as industrial use, are we clear on what those uses will be or what we're putting here?
Sure. So if you look at the uses allowed, it's really limited. It's about 12 uses, all of which would be required to be inside. So think of a small electrician or plumber that would need to store some light things interior, but also have an office front for the public. So although it says industrial, if you look at the uses, the only one we add is industrial light. And again, that is all required to be interior.
Okay, that's not too scary. So I will again move for approval.
All right, we have a motion to approve item K. And a second, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item 11L was previously deferred, but we are now going to reconsider that deferral. Councilman Stone's
Can I
going to
make
make the
a
motion.
motion that we reconsider the deferral on item L?
Okay. So let's bring that up. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We are now back on item L, which has been undeferred. And this is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 3339 Southwest 74th from PUD 1761 to SPUD 1521. This is in Ward 5, but
And I just want to verify that no one had signed up previously to speak
they
on
have
this
not.
matter?
They have not.
All right, there were no protesters. Actually, it's a nice little project for some affordable housing, I think, that's right next to O-Trip. So with that, I'll move for its approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11M is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 6901 North Chartel from R1 to SPUD 1522. Councilman Cooper, no one has signed up to speak.
And yet, I'm going to ask the representative's applicant to get some steps in today. I'm going to do it also, so yeah.
Good morning, Mark Zitzel with Johnson and Associates. This is a piece of property that you've seen a few times over the years. This area had been transitioning somewhat industrial, and then it was transitioning back to residential. And so before you today is a request for an SPUD that will add 2 homes on a lot that's zoned for a single-family home. You can see a new house 2 lots down that was recently constructed. So there was 1 TE at Planning Commission. We had agreed to that, and we had unanimous approval. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Here we go. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And with that, I would move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item 11N is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, closing portions of the platted street rights-of-way for Independence Avenue, Versaw Street, that's a new one for me, Land Avenue within the Packingdale addition, west of South Grand and south of Southwest 15th. Councilwoman Hammond, no one has signed up to speak.
I will move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Okay. Passes unanimously. 11O is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, closing the west 25 feet of a 42-foot wide north-south easement west of Southwestern and south of the Oklahoma River. Councilwoman Hammond.
I will move for approval.
A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 11P, ordinance on final hearing establishing 90-degree angle parking within a setback parking area on the west side of North Robinson, near Northwest 96th. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, I will move for approval.
Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11Q is an ordinance on final hearing establishing a reserved parking space for the physically disabled within a setback area on the west side of North Robinson from approximately, well, let's just say near Northwest 96th. Councilwoman Nice.
I will again move for approval.
A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11R is the public hearing regarding the dilapidated structures here listed. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
They have not, and so we will advance to the resolution found at R2 declaring that the structures are dilapidated. I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11S1 is the public hearing regarding the unsecured structures here listed, except for those previously struck. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
I do have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Item AD, 807 Northeast 63rd Street Commercial Building and Shed. I'm just curious because I live near the area, so I have seen it secured. So I'm just curious what the requirements are and what has not been fulfilled. Because I saw it before, and I actually saw it after they did the work. So just curious.
Yeah, this one, I think the last time they were out was probably early last week. Was it secured after that? Do you know of?
Yes, it's probably been, it was the latter part of last week. And I can attest that it has been fulfilled.
Okay. Well, typically what we'll do in this instance is we would prefer the council goes ahead and declares it, then I'll go check it today, and if it is, then we can administratively close the case.
Okay.
But I can let you know today.
Okay. I just want to make sure my vision is correct because I did see it. All right, so I'll leave that on there.
Okay. So we're back on the items. I don't know that we've resolved. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
Okay, so we can adopt the resolution found at 11S2 declaring that the structures are unsecured, except for those previously struck. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 11T1 is the public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings here listed, except for those previously struck. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
Then we will proceed to the resolution found at 11T2 declaring that the buildings are abandoned. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 11U is a public hearing regarding a resolution declaring approximately 10.6 acres of real property located near Southeast 22nd Street and Eastern Avenue as surplus for park purposes, etc. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak under this public hearing?
No, they haven't.
All right, that's the second of three meetings at which this item will be placed, and I believe that means it will be scheduled for a final vote at our next meeting on July 5th. Okay, we previously, so I'll close the public hearing and advance forward. We have previously approved item V and item W, which brings us to item X. This is a resolution adopting the City of Oklahoma City Emergency Operations Plan and authorizing the city manager to implement such plan, et cetera. And I believe we have a presentation.
Yes. This is our emergency operations plan, and Audrey George is going to give us a quick presentation on the updates on our plan and the plan for this year.
All right, so good morning, Council and Mayor. So first, I would like to thank City leadership for funding the emergency planner position in the Office of Emergency Management. Having Jason Knight on board has helped out tremendously. He is able to focus on the various city plans, including the emergency operations plan. The emergency operations plan has to be updated annually, and so I asked Jason to come with me today to present the changes.
Thank you. You guys know it's an annual update for the EOP. Really this year, there's no major changes. The one thing you'll see, perhaps the biggest change, is just the formatting. It's such a fun document to read. But we formatted it, added some color to it, changed it up a little. The substance is not changed. We updated the situation overview, the population for the 2020 census, that kind of stuff. I'll just add that this is a collaborative effort, and it takes all of city staff, all the departments coming together to work on this because it affects all the whole city. So that's all the changes, is just the formatting, some situation overview, and then of course bringing the hazard vulnerability annex up to par, synchronizing it with our hazard mitigation plan for 2022.
And I just want to add too, I really appreciate the work of the team, and they do work with all the different departments. And it's not a book to sit down and thumb through and read, but it's a reference that's critical when we run into critical incidents. And it's like every incident has a little bit different nuance to it, and they go through and think through thoroughly what we should do in every situation. I really do appreciate the leadership on that.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no questions, we can adopt the resolution. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much for your work, guys. Item Y has previously been approved. Item Z has previously been approved. Item AA has previously been approved, which brings us to item 12, comments from council. Ward 2.
Okay, before I begin, a brief reminder, last council meeting during this time, I said nothing.
You know, it's
That's how it works.
It's not like you're banking time.
I am banking time. I am in fact banking time. I am banking time. So just wanted to say that. First, some logistics. City manager, would you mind having someone reach out to OG&E, please? I had residents texting me over the last couple days about the loss of electricity. And, you know, as often is the case, people don't know which government body is the regulatory one. I actually want to thank Spencer Brown for reaching out immediately on Father's Day, by the way, reaching out to a neighbor in Denniston Park who connected with me. But that neighbor had some questions about the time and why it took the time that it did. So I said I would bring it to your attention.
Sure, and do you want to get me that contact for that individual so we can have them reach back out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you for that. Yes. I'll save, since Matt's not here, I'll save that. Okay, so my mother watches city council meetings, and this is largely something I'd like to say to her. It's Pride Month, and she took me to lunch on Saturday, the day before Father's Day, and she told me, even though my parents had separated when I was 20, and my dad, who passed away, as you all know, from alcoholism in 2017, for all of his internal battles, he was always, once I came out at 19, okay with that. But my mom reminded me on Saturday he had a pretty grave concern that I hadn't heard her say in a while, which was that he used to talk to her, and keep in mind, my father and I didn't talk for 20 years after their separation. But they spoke, my mom and he spoke. And he said, I hope Jamie, because my dad's name is James also, I hope Jamie is safe because I know how mean people can be. Yeah. And so I just wanted to say to my mom on this Pride Month, happy Pride, and thank you for when I was 1996, and I saw my very first LGBT characters in a movie. It was The Birdcage, and it is my mom's favorite movie. She can quote it. She prefers the Nathan Lane drag queen character to Robin Williams' more subdued Armand character. And when I came out to her when I saw that movie with her in 1996, it was still illegal to be gay in Oklahoma, punishable by a 10-year prison sentence. A 10-year prison sentence that we borrowed from the Dakota Territories at the creation of statehood. 10 years, not in the county jail, not in the city jail, in prison. And that was the law of Oklahoma from the beginning of the state all the way until 2003, 2 years after I came out to my mother, which means I was a 21-year-old Oklahoman when the United States Supreme Court overturned that law. So it was a scary time from 19 to 21, knowing that having told my mother I was gay, I was doing something literally illegal, like illegal. To have a boyfriend at the time, that was illegal. Think about that. That's wild. That is wild. So I think about it, and I think and thank all the heavens, anything at the root of creation. I am so grateful, my mother, when I told her I was gay at age 19, that her response was, I know, and I love you. So, Mom, thank you, and I hope other moms, and I hope other dads, and other guardians hear that story and share affirming words with their child, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, but especially if they are queer. And here's why. So this is from the Trevor Project. And I just love that my mom, who is now 79 from Texarkana, just knew this instinctively, that she had to be this affirming, loving mom to help me avoid this. And so here are the statistics. I hear people are really concerned about youth these days. Number one, LGBT youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their peers. One more time. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender youth are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than all their classmates. All their classmates. The same research finds 45% of LGBT youth seriously considered attempting suicide in 2022. So, okay, think about that. If there was a class, and for whatever reason that entire class was LGBT kids, you had 20 students. I used to have 20 middle school students. Imagine all of them are LGBT. Now imagine 10 of them have seriously considered attempting suicide. That should horrify every single person, not only in this chamber, but in this city, in this state, in this country. The other very important thing in Oklahoma is to think about the fact that LGBT youth of color, and I know sometimes people have told me, even within the LGBT community, they say, it's divisive to mention the differences when it comes to the color of one's skin. Why aren't we just all under the rainbow flag? I've heard straight people say, why aren't we just all under the American flag? Spoiler, everybody, we are. We are. It's right there. It's right behind me. There's the flag. We salute it. The rainbow flag, it flies. Yet we have to acknowledge color, because when you look at Oklahoma and you think of our Native American ancestry and history, you should know this, which is that someone who is Native American, and this is also from the Trevor Project, their research has found that Native American LGBT youth are 2.5 times more likely, 2.5 times more likely to report a suicide attempt in 2022 compared with their other LGBT peers. That's 33% of them. 33% of Native American LGBT youth have attempted suicide, to take their life. That's Native American. These numbers are similar for Middle Eastern LGBT youth, Black youth, multiracial youth like myself, Hispanic, Latinx youth, Asian Pacific Islander youth. And should they live into their adulthood? We also know from research at the federal level that the rate of violent victimization of lesbian and gay persons is actually twice the rate of straight people. There is a history of violence. There is a history of violence that begins on the playground. It begins there and it works its way into adulthood. And we as adults have a choice. We can put our heads in the sand and pretend that what happens on the playground is just boys being boys and girls being girls, or we can acknowledge that our children's literal lives are in danger. Literal, actual lives are in danger, and that haunts them well into adulthood. In fact, I've told the story previously of a Ward 2 resident, Paul Thompson, and I'll speak at length on this history today because you might remember it doesn't exist in our K through 12 textbooks. Doesn't exist in any K through 12 textbook. And in fact, every time someone even asks to mention Harvey Milk, the first openly LGBT elected official, people swoop in and say, no, if you do that, God will be sad. What? God created Harvey Milk, if you believe in God. What are we talking about? We don't tell these histories, and a lot of people don't want to even hear these statistics. So I will share the story of Paul because Paul is an important figure in America's LGBT story. Paul was a Ward 2 resident, and in 1969, he went into a beer bar here in Oklahoma City. And when he did, he playfully said hello and kissed 3 friends on the neck. And what he did not know was sitting at the bar as well was an undercover police officer. Remember I told you it was illegal to be LGBT. 10 years in prison was what you faced. And so what Paul did not know was that cop was there. Paul walks out of the bar a bit later, whoosh, 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 flashing lights. Paul goes to jail for simply kissing his friends to say hello on the neck in Oklahoma City, in Oklahoma's capital city. And at the time, the Daily Oklahoman published your name, your home address, and your place of employment. So whoever employed you now knew you were arrested under words that said moral complaints. It wasn't just that you were going to lose your job, and you did. You lost your job. You lost your job. You absolutely lost your job. They also now knew where you lived. So cross burnings were common in the front yards of LGBT folk, who again were Black, Asian American, you name it, they are who they are. So Paul did the unthinkable. And I can't stop thinking about Paul recently because he fought back. He was a lawyer, and that night in jail, he said, no, I'm gonna fight this. And that never happened. You never fought it. You never fought it. And he fought it, and the judge said, this arrest, lewd and lascivious behavior, those are too subjective, and those words are, to do that is unconstitutional. In other words, they said for the first time in Oklahoma City history that a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender person was a person. Literally, that they were protected under the Constitution. So for all of my friends who love the Constitution and love the Declaration, then that moment should matter a whole heck of a lot to you, because it is the defining moment in Oklahoma's LGBT story, where for the first time, someone found themselves protected under this flag, under this flag, under those bars. My God, it's a beautiful thing. And it's why I took the oath on the Declaration and Constitution, because it is a beautiful book. So I think that is a story that is important as well, because 1969 is the same year as the Stonewall riots, when cops had raided for years bars and clubs that gays and lesbians frequented for years, and would arrest them and beat them. And who do you tell? You don't tell the cops. You can't tell the cops. The cops are doing it to you. The cops are beating you. They're beating you. But that night, LGBT people, as they were arrested, pushed themselves out of the paddy wagon. I watched a PBS documentary this weekend called Stonewall Uprising, pushed themselves out of the paddy wagon. You can Google Stonewall Uprising and watch it for yourselves. Pushed themselves out of the paddy wagon. Do you know who led Stonewall? It was LGBTQ youth. This city should understand that, because LGBTQ youth disproportionately make up 40% of youth homelessness. Why? Because too many of their parents kick them out of their homes. Too many of their parents beat them out of their homes. And they run away. And now they're at the mercy of disproportionately addiction, substance abuse, sex trafficking, predatory behavior. And those were the kids in 1969, when it was still illegal in every state but Illinois to be gay, said, I have nothing to lose and I'm gonna fight back. I have nothing to lose, my life. What life? And they fought back that night against the cops. And you know what? The next night, straight people joined them. The Black Panthers joined them. Anti-war protesters joined them. Straight parents joined them and said, it's about time you all stood up for yourself. It's about time, and I'm gonna join you. So there were 2 nights of protest, 3 nights of protest. And listening to one of the survivors of that describe the next morning after the first protest, and to look on Christopher Street where Stonewall exists, small bar, and to see glitter hit the sun as it rose. And he said it just looked beautiful, because that's what liberation and freedom look like. I'm so proud of those kids, and I hope that they always, each generation, know the story of Stonewall, but that they also know the story of Paul right here in Oklahoma City. Paul Thompson, Ward 2, that's our legacy. I'll conclude by saying there might be some people listening to me who are thinking 2 things. One, oh, Stonewall sure was a long time ago. Sure seems like y'all don't have anything to complain about anymore. Rewind this video to go back to those statistics. Go Google Stonewall right now, and you will see that 2 times in recent weeks, people have vandalized the memorial right outside of the bar. 2 times. 2 vandalisms. A historic site. Can you imagine someone vandalizing our Oklahoma City bombing memorial? How would you feel? I wouldn't feel good. How would you feel if they did it to the 9/11 memorial? I wouldn't feel good. How would you feel if they did that to the Clara Looper Center as it is built? I wouldn't feel good. No, we are a country made up of multiple backgrounds, and we honor those backgrounds. We honor all of them. That is what we do. There might also be then people who think, but God says. That's great, because within Christianity, there are 5,000 denominations plus, and each of them say something. Good, great. Go read more. Go read the other sacred books. And I'll tell you what, after you've read all the sacred texts, all of them, from all the world religions, and after you've read their histories of how they were written, if you still think it is okay for a queer kid to kill themselves, you still think it's okay for someone to beat the holy hell out of an adult queer person, then God help you.
Thank you, Ward 3. Ward 4. Ward 6. Ward 7.
Yes, just a few things. First, to Council Person Cooper, just know you are seen, and your work does not go unnoticed to make sure that those that also want and desire to be seen are also addressed and seen as well. A couple things. First, as we celebrated the federal holiday of Juneteenth, it was a busy weekend within our communities in Northeast Oklahoma City, but I will say I'm very excited for the continuing efforts of new Juneteenth events that are happening all across the city and the county, if you will, because I know for Midwest City, they had their inaugural Juneteenth events over the weekend, as well as Norman actually had some Juneteenth events over the weekend. But of course, I have to brag on Northeast Oklahoma City. One of the things that happened Friday is 5K, and just to report y'all, I didn't run, I didn't walk either, so I'm sorry. But I got a medal, so selfishly I did, yes. But the beautiful thing about that is last year we had 800 people sign up, about 700 ran. This year, over 1,600 people signed up, and I know they had just as many run because the streets were packed and the neighborhood was so involved. Like, people were in their front yards cheering on the people that were walking and running and celebrating the diversity and the freedom and the emancipation of what Juneteenth brings. So very special thanks to Juneteenth on the East for that particular event, as well as Red Coyote, because they run a well-oiled machine when it comes to these types of events. And, you know, about an hour after the run, they were packed up and gone. But that just tells you again how these types of events are necessary in communities that may not have been able to have a 5K until last year, and now being able to have an annual 5K that speaks to just bringing people together in the sake of Juneteenth and what the community brings. And then the next day with the festival, so many people down there as well, and they did end right, but at least they had time before we had the horrible wind and storms that came. But again, this weekend, the brunch and all of the other places and events that happened, that occurred within our communities, you know, kudos to everyone, again, being able to celebrate the reason for us to thrive and exist. And I'll just say the quick history as we look at Juneteenth, again, the Emancipation Proclamation being signed January 1st, 1863. That news traveling did not get to the South until 1865, June 19th. And then as we talk about the story that continues for Oklahoma, it was the Battle of Honey Springs that happened about 1861 through 1865. And then those peace treaties were signed in 1866
that emancipated everyone that was enslaved in Oklahoma in the area, about Lawton, Rentisville in that area of Oklahoma. So again, that story continues to exist. And another event that I was able to attend with the chair of the Pride Alliance that was here earlier, we were both a part of judging the Sisu event for the young people. This was their intersection event of celebrating Pride as well as Juneteenth. So that was an awesome thing to be a part of and judge, and to experience the joy of them having their emancipation and their freedom as well to be themselves. So very grateful to Sisu for that invitation to be a part of what they had. I do want to say, as we looked at that item CV, and my question as we look at those automated license plate readers are the policies and procedures and the questions that we had pertaining to how many people have been stopped as of current, where those zip code areas are as far as where we are looking at those stops, in specifically, I guess, for communities that we know have been disenfranchised when it comes to our system of stopping folks as they drive, and intentional stops, deliberate stops. And again, how this has currently been used in areas of our community. One of the things I did not get to mention at the last meeting, frankly, because I forgot, was attending our school district meeting and talking through our school closings. And I know our council received at least one letter from some folks who are concerned about school closings. And I know, we get it that that's not something personally as far as our council that we can govern, but as communities, I'm concerned as a resident of areas where these same schools have been repurposed or either torn down or sold at lesser value for some and a higher value for others. I don't agree with the process of how that works, and working through one school in particular right now within our Capitol View neighborhood, I am very concerned about the practices of what this could bring as far as the purchase and sale of this school in comparison to other places. But with Scheidler, I know for that community, it's very unfortunate that we weren't able to work on the necessary outcomes of improvements that needed to happen before these young people are now displaced from their home school and having to experience going to a brand new school, and possibly their parents having the barrier of how to get them to those specific schools, whereas before they could probably just walk them across the street. And now we have a burden of how do we get these babies to school, maybe half a mile or more than a mile away from where their home location is. So again, as we look at that, those are concerns. Oh, I know a couple other things. Congratulations to our newest 7-Eleven on Northeast Kelly and 23rd Street. They had their grand opening last week, and it has been booming before they even did the grand opening. And so clearly people were excited about that. And also to True Sky Credit Union. They will be doing their grand opening and ribbon cutting this week, and that's located on Northeast 23rd Street as well, which also coincides with the things that we talked about earlier with 23rd Street in general, just being able to have a better way of opportunity of retail and commercial businesses with our BRT that's coming online for 23rd Street going east. And we want to make sure that is developed for everyone to enjoy, and not for us to be able to just house and warehouse these types of medical waste facilities, Superfund sites, and the things that are very harmful to the people that live around them. So I hope we can continue to work on better developments for these areas, especially the areas that we're looking at to maintain BRT. And also to the mayor, thank you for your assistance in that item for us to be able to look at that further. I appreciate that.
May I add something? Nikki, the councilwoman, thank you for your comments about my remarks. That means a lot to me, and thanks for coming into Ward 2 to do the CSU work. That's neat. And you know, it just reminds me, y'all, queer people rule. We are so cool. We have the coolest stuff, drag, the movies we make. I just gave y'all some epic horror, but let me just tell y'all, we're amazing. You heard them earlier, joy. We have a lot of joy, and thank you, Mayor. Mayor, thank you for your comments a few weeks ago online. Like, that meant a lot to some people. I know you have your critics. Sometimes I critique you. Don't you worry, I have more for you in the future. But no, that's an important thing. And let me also just say, I look around this room right now, every single one of you have always been welcoming to me. Not just welcoming, kind, you listen. I want the people of OKC to know, if you're LGBTQ, this city has your back. We're not always gonna get it right, but we got your back, and I can attest to that because every single human being in this room has always treated me with dignity, respect, and that is not what happens at the legislature too often. So I just really want to say some good there. Just really, all of y'all, good. Just really good. On a sad note, and Mayor, you probably really, I'm sorry to tell you this, the gentleman, Donnie Wilson, who was in the news a few weeks ago for always helping clean up 39th Street, he passed away in recent days. And, you know, I can't think of, first of all, I remember when I think you shared his story, and, you know, I know you did that out of some kindness, but, you know, someone in your position sharing his story, like someone who I don't think ever thought a mayor would ever care, that's cool. That's part of the cool stuff. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that sadness. But I think what a waste it would be if we didn't take this moment to celebrate life and the victories. So Nikki, thanks for your kind words. Thanks, Mayor, and just literally everyone in this room. You thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very sorry to hear that. Donnie was a special person. All right, that concludes comments from council, brings us to item 13, citizens to be heard, and we have Ronnie Kirk, who has signed up.
Let me know we started Juneteenth.
Okay.
And then hold this up.
Okay.
I'll hold it up for you.
Okay. So, as you guys know, Juneteenth was this weekend, and it's a good thing that the city started celebrating it, but the person who started Juneteenth in Oklahoma was my great-grandfather, Ronnie Kirk.
In 1960.
In 1960. And the city should recognize him for actually starting it in Oklahoma.
My name is Ronnie Kirk. My address is 2328 North Missouri. I'm gonna take y'all way back to the 50s, when they had the oil boom. When they first started drilling for the oil, the air quality was so bad that the federal government told them, y'all gotta clean that air up. So they did. They built a holding tank as big as this room for the gas underground. On top of that holding tank, they built the biggest school in the world. As houses grow and areas grow, gas was free back during that time. One spark, after several years, one spark set that bomb on fire. It killed 900 people and 300 teachers. 900. You know, I'm starting to understand politics. When they give a notice, public notice, at 3:30 in the morning, when people are asleep, not listening, not reading. 2 months ago, I stood right here. The lady giving out the marijuana licenses.
30 seconds,
Over
please.
7,000. 2 weeks ago, our governor came on there 3:26 in the morning, signing a bill and passing it. For other states, people out of the country can't get the license. It's a little late. It's just like the lieutenant and the captain riding in the war backwards. You know, Skittles, candy bars, them chewables, they now have chewable THC gummy bears, the same as they candy. If you lose 15 kids in each state throughout the years, you lose a whole lot of kids for the greed of money. And thank y'all.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks.
All right, that concludes our agenda. We're at item 14, adjournment, and we are adjourned.